All right. Well, welcome, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Our topic is the importance of data and analytics in an uncertain world. And I'm really excited to be here. A couple of housekeeping notes before we roll into content and introductions. We are using GoToWebinar today, and it's a great platform. And we really want this to be very interactive and allow people to ask questions and to chat with us. And so a couple of notes for everyone. There is a section in the GoToWebinar interface called questions. And I encourage all of you in attendance to please make heavy use of the questions interface. The topic we're going to be discussing today will certainly end up causing lots of questions in your mind, and please share those with us so we can address them all. I will be monitoring those. In addition, there is a chat section in the webinar platform, and in there you can send us messages. You can ask questions there as well. We'll watch both the questions area and the chat area. And if you're having trouble hearing us or seeing us, or you have any other notes for us, let us know in the chat section. Finally, there are some handouts that are attached to the webinar as well. In the interface, you'll see 2 PDF files. This gives some general information about Mission, about Amorphic, and also some special offers and kind of things that we can do together. So take a look at those as well. We're also going to have some polls, so take a look out for that. And I think you could also stick around to the end for a special offer that we have there as well. So with all of that, I think it's time for us to tell you who it is that you're talking to today, or who is talking to you today. So my name is Jonathan LaCour. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Mission. I'll introduce a little bit about Mission in a moment, but first I'd like to welcome Mark Schreiber.
Hey, hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Mark is the general manager of Amorphic, and Mission and Amorphic together can definitely solve a lot of challenges for you when it comes to data and analytics. And before we dive into the content, let's talk a little bit about who you are. So I'm going to launch a poll that asks, what is your role in your business? And so take a look there. The poll is in progress as you answer. I get to see the answers flowing in. So definitely let us know who you are, what your role is at your business. It helps us to make sure we tailor the content to you. And thank you so much. I see some responses coming in. Got about half of the votes coming in. All right, almost all of them now. All right, perfect. Well, look at that. This is fantastic. So if we share the results here, a third, and a third are data science engineers, or say data engineers, data scientists, and in line of business, right? So that is really, really great. That helps us a lot as we're rolling through today. And with that, let's talk about who is Mission. So Mission is an AWS Premier Consulting partner, and we're also a managed cloud service provider. We have a whole comprehensive suite of services kind of across the entire spectrum of your cloud journey. We call it architect, migrate, manage, and optimize, right? This is the entire kind of life cycle for our businesses as they're going through their transition to the cloud. And that we can be your one-stop shop partner, right, for that entire cloud journey. So if you're thinking about making the move, we can help you architect for that move and then perform the migration. We can actually manage your environment once you're there, help you deploy, DevOps into your organization, CI/CD pipeline implementation, and we can do cost optimization, performance optimization, and so on. So that's a little bit about Mission. We are distributed all over the United States, North America, and I'm based in Los Angeles. So, and I'll let Mark introduce Amorphic.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Pleasure to be here today. You know, in this world of COVID and rapidly changing, business demographics, it's really interesting how data and analytics is emerging as probably one of the most important projects for companies to implement this year. Cloudwick is a company that's been focused on data and analytics at scale for the last 10 years, and we're the developer of Amorphic, which is a data lake analytics platform for Amazon, which deploys into a customer's account in about an hour and a half, and it gives them fully governed, fully secure, fully orchestrated usage in a self-service platform of the Amazon Analytics stack. So everything from search to data warehousing with Redshift to ad hoc querying with Athena to the AI services like Comprehend, Textract, Recognition, as well as machine learning with the full suite of SageMaker solutions. So really what we're here today to do is to talk about how Amorphic really is transforming the speed and pace at which healthcare and life science organizations can migrate from a traditional on-premise data and analytics strategy to a cloud one, which is really critical to understanding not only your business, but your customer as well as your competition. So in this slide, what we're basically doing here is we're setting, there's two paths that all companies have. One is to build and do a DevOps path and creating a data lake for their analytics, or it's a buy, manage solution. And that's what Amorphic and Mission bring to market. I know these are crazy numbers, but it's true. I mean, imagine not having to do any type of development or operational support for a complete data and analytic platform in the cloud. Well, the results are, really staggering for every organization, with about 18,000 being actually the minimum time to production improvement that organizations see with Amorphic and with Mission. The other is, one which is really important to organizations always, and that is cost. When you look at the cost of Amorphic and Mission data and analytics, it is at minimum 600% cheaper. And we've got lots of customers who can testify to this, just because if you can imagine, not having to have the staff, not having to build, which oftentimes is a 12 to 24 month development and engineering cycle with 8 to 15 team members to build out these data lake analytic platforms, which drives obviously the lowest cost of operation. But probably the most important is it allows for the healthcare and life sciences company and data teams to be able to leverage and access with governance and security the data fast and use any of the analytic tools that they need in their organization to deliver better business. So that's kind of an overview of Amorphic, and back to you, Jonathan.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I have to say, when Mark and I first had an opportunity to meet and talk about Amorphic, we walked through this exact kind of notion, and we were encountering so many customers who were saying, I really need to get some traction here, and the costs to do this are just going to be staggering. I don't have the staff, I don't have the skill set. How do I get from here to there? So I think it's a very timely conversation. And I'm going to go ahead and launch one more poll before we talk about the agenda, which is, we talked about some of the challenges just there, but I want to hear what your challenges are with building an AWS data lake. So definitely put those responses in for us. This is my favorite thing to do in a webinar, is to launch a poll, because I get to see all the answers before everybody else does. Seeing 25% of you have voted so far, so keep it coming. And I will say, don't hesitate. Everyone is going to have a challenge here, right? This has not been traditionally an easy thing to do, building out a data lake, which is, I think, primarily why we're having this conversation today.
Exactly.
Right. Good responses. Oh, thank you so much. All right, here we go. Let's take a look and see what the results are. Unsurprisingly, the skill set is the top response, right? Time being the next one, and cost didn't show up, but I think, as we all know, that whole old adage of time is money, as you need to go out and acquire those skills, or either by hiring or by training, that costs money, and the time to actually develop it also costs money. So this all do flow together. Wow, what a good, insightful poll. So thank you for having that answer. So let's talk about what we're going to kind of address today. So first, we're going to unpack a little bit about why data and analytics are important now, at this moment in time. What are the factors that are contributing to that increased importance, and why they're essential? We're going to talk about the challenges, right? We've already discussed them briefly, but we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and unpack how Mission and Amorphic solve those problems, those challenges. We'll also talk about how why Mission and Amorphic? Why not just Amorphic or just Mission, or why not do it on your own, right? How does this process work? How do we integrate together to deliver a solution for you? And then we'll dive into an HCLS use case, and we'll have some time for Q&A as well. As I mentioned, questions can come in at any time. I will be monitoring them in the questions interface. Please do fire those in the entire time. I love to grill Mark and put him on the spot. So let's make it fun. And with that, let's dive in. This is mostly going to be conversational, everyone. So while I do have a slide up on the screen, most of the information is going to be just conversation between Mark and I. And I would love to hear, Mark, just a quick highlight of why the time we're in your view and your perspective, is making data analytics more an essential kind of component.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely great question. And I think what's been really interesting in the last 2 years, there's certainly been a movement. One of the challenges that organizations have had is data and analytics has always been a very expensive, as well as a very skill set intensive and complicated solution set to bring into their organization. And so that's always been kind of a barrier for most organizations. So one is going to be, the available resources to be able to build, operate, and manage both the data and the analytics. And if we look at, before cloud, the cost of storing data and computing data was extremely expensive, whether it was with, the traditional data warehousing or other. And so what happened then was companies really had to be very narrow in terms of what data they were going to analyze. And the cost of analysis also was a very big burden on an organization, because the cost of compute in a data warehouse or in a data mart is very expensive. The result was only the really largest and most heavily financed companies could really afford the insights that came from data warehousing, which was, again, all historical analytics. Right. And so kind of what's interesting there is what the cloud has done is the cloud has really now separated the cost factor and the complexity factor. Because now, as an organization, I no longer have to look at investing in my data center, which requires obviously a lot of cost analysis. And the challenge too is if you look at the amount of data that's really required to be able to make better decisions, it goes far beyond what was traditionally collected and analyzed. And so that's one. Another is COVID, really interesting. And I think this is, something which is really re-architecting business today. Because today, whereas IT is a complicated type service to deliver at an organization level, and with COVID and for companies moving to a distributed work model, with that really impacting then the ability for teams to be able to work, in a collaborative, in-person type experience, for these types of projects, we saw skills being, I think, the highest challenge that companies have. Well, now imagine, your challenge is that you've got now upwards of 35, 45 Amazon analytics services, everything from governance to security to access management, data management, and then the orchestration of that data and user to the analytics suite. You've now got something that for most organizations is already beyond, their capability. And now with COVID, where you have a distributed, distance, workforce, bringing these more complicated data and analytic projects to life is a bigger challenge. And so that's why what we've seen with Mission over the last, really, I'd say 120 days, is we've seen a real acceleration in terms of how companies are viewing the strategic nature of their data. And that really is because also if we look at how things are changing, Jonathan, customer models are moving from in-person selling to digital selling. And with this, the whole customer 360 of being able to, really identify how my customer is finding me, what my customer's experience is with my products and services, it's really becoming imperative that customers not customers, but businesses be able to have those insights. So those are, I think, some of the bigger factors that are influencing the rise of also wanting to have a simplistic data and analytic platform that doesn't require any development, doesn't require any support, provides also the users, the analysts, the line of business, and the executives with a self-service, fully governed Amazon data lake analytics platform that is up and running in 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. Really good overview there, Mark. And I think the thing that's most interesting to me is there's this sort of like tug from both sides, right? In the world that we live in, there is an increased need for that insight, right? So, if you're making a shift to more online sales, right? For example, we have a lot of e-commerce customers. They are really seeing a huge increase in the workload that they're seeing, and they need more insight. They need to be able to react quickly, and data and analytics can drive that. But on the other hand, you have the flip side of that, which is a lot of people are struggling with cost and are looking for ways to optimize. They need to de-risk. Now's not a good time. We hear this time and time again from customers. Now's not a great time for me to take on a large, challenging infrastructure project. And that makes sense, right? I understand why someone would be in that position as a business, but that's sort of why I think the uniqueness of Amorphic kind of slides in nicely here, because it solves for some of those challenges. And the other thing is, I think, just to call it out, the traditional model is really about a heavy lift. It is this very bespoke, taking the 50 different services and the 20 different building blocks and gluing them all together manually. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we discuss the challenges that Amorphic solves for, and that's sort of the next thing. But I do think this kind of sort of leads into that. Any other things to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, Jonathan, I think one of the other things that's really important in terms of what's changing is that we're truly becoming a data economy. And so, one of the things that we'll talk about in the use case section is how health and life sciences companies are finding a tremendous new revenue opportunity in their data, whether that is, reselling that data from a research perspective in a data exchange, but also it's the pace and speed of innovation that they can achieve when all of the data that is then, what has been traditionally siloed, becomes now part of a data lake in which it's governed securely, so that now the data scientists and the data teams have access to all of the data with permission-based access to then use, for whatever tool they need, whether it's taking, sensor data, which is unstructured, with structured data, which may be patient healthcare, records, and being able to now put together a complete story with structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. These are the things that are driving innovation in health and life science companies. So it is, I think that the data economy is really driving the need for companies to leverage data lake analytics.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree, and we're seeing it as well in the market. Just a quick reminder to attendees, we do have the question section. Start tossing those in as you have them. The chat section is open and the handouts are there. And with that, let's talk about the challenges, right? I think we framed up why it's important. And we've also talked a little bit about some of the challenge, right? The skills gap, the cost gap. One of the things that, as a person who's a technologist and who has worked in operations for many years, I love the metrics, right? That sort of are the key things that I want to lean into that I'm trying to solve for. So, when I'm dealing with network performance, for example, I may care about time to first byte, for example. Well, the thing that I think I want to call out is time to first insight, right? When you're thinking about data and analytics as a platform, we talk about all of the tools and components in machine learning, they are born out of academia, right? Across the board. And Amazon has done a great job of taking these academic tools that are developed not for business users, and then they have wrapped services around them to make them more accessible and integrated. But they've only gone so far. You still have, a huge number of services to manage. So you're having to glue them together and integrate them, and that's a challenge, right? So lots of different pieces to put together, and I think, Mark, you touched on governance. Maybe give us a little insight as to why that's such a huge challenge, and I think especially for HCLS companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's happening, and I'll use a recent public win, that is panzer.org. So that's out of the Imperial College in Europe, and they're really the CDC for Europe. And one of the challenges that they had with the COVID crisis back in early March was they recognized that as an institution that was really looking at how to provide better health care to a global population, one of the challenges that they had was that this was a global pandemic. And as a result, when you looked at it from the perspective of research and development, so, who's been involved in this, just to give you some perspective. So the largest medical manufacturers like Medtronic are part of this panzer.org drive. Others are Johnson & Johnson, working on, the solutions from a medicine perspective, vaccinations. And one of the challenges that they had was this, Jonathan. So you had China, you had Italy, you had France, you had the United States, you had the UK, you had all of this medical research about patients' response to different care. And the challenge was, and as well as blogs, you had, again, this is how the medical, establishment has changed. You have all of these hospitals and physicians and nurse practitioners and nurses who are treating these patients totally unsure of what were the best processes and procedures to follow. And so one of the things that Panzer did was they turned to Amazon and to Amorphic, and they said, we need to have a rapid response. We need to have the ability to take this, what is honestly tens of millions of documents about patient and physician care for COVID. And now what we need to be able to do is create a data lake for this repository of data. Now, when you start thinking about this, having literally tens of millions of documents that then, whether you're a healthcare provider or whether you're a medical manufacturer like Medtronic trying to build better medical devices, or like Johnson & Johnson trying to develop a vaccine for COVID, it's too much information. And so just to give you kind of like the challenges was, okay, we now have tens of millions of documents, whether it's from blogs or from other medical information and data. So here was one of the interesting things that technology with a data lake analytic platform like Amorphic is able to do is we took the AI services and the machine learning services, and what we extended was something that's called Amazon Kendra. And so Amazon Kendra allows you to take a document management platform like Amorphic, and now what the user can do is they can tag the data when they're uploading the data, but more importantly, the general population can now ask questions of this giant data lake of data. And this is really where it becomes exciting, is that you see healthcare providers looking to leverage technology to deliver faster, better services. So that's a good example of a challenge. Too much data can also be, a challenge for an organization like Panzer, but solvable with Amorphic and cloud data and analytics.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the governance side of things is a very significant part of the challenge, because there's a lot of sensitivity, obviously, around data, and especially with above and beyond just HIPAA, right? So there are organizations who are working on vaccines for COVID right now, and they're under attack, right? And really knowing that you have a handle on, okay, where does my data live? Who has access to it? How can I manage that access, audit it, and keep it under control? Really, the whole governance, activity, and that is a huge challenge.
Jonathan, yeah, let me add to that, and I think this Panzer is a great example. So here you literally had, tens of thousands of users, right, coming from different hospitals, different countries. And one of the challenges that we saw as a company in the data and analytics space, specifically the big data, was the ability for the producer, the data owner, to control who can access and use their data. And this is one of the areas that Amorphic really shines. very strongly in, is that we created a data producer model. And so the data producer then, whether it's a healthcare provider in China, the UK, or US, or it's a physician, they can set the policy as to who has access. And the other thing that's important is I, as a user or a consumer of that data, I have a secure view of the entire global data set. But that secure view doesn't provide me with context that would be private. And so what this then allows me to do is say, at Johnson & Johnson, I may do that, query, and I may find some data sets that I think are interesting, but I have not been given permission to access those data sets. With Amorphic, that example as a data team at Johnson & Johnson, all they would simply do is hit request data. They would put their organization, their name, and the reason for it, and it would route through the system and by email to the producer or owner of that data. And they can make the determination as to whether or not to grant that team or that user access to their data set.
Right. Yeah, I think my first exposure to Amorphic, when we were walking through kind of the role-based access control and the governance kind of capabilities, that got me really jazzed, because I know all of the building blocks are out there and available, right? That's never really been the challenge with AWS. What I think Amorphic brings to the table is simplification, a use case driven focus, right?
Yes.
And you end up accelerating, getting there at that time to first insight with the governance guardrails in place, I might add, much more rapidly. And I think the other thing to call out here is a challenge people often come to us for is we really want an AWS native solution, right? We don't want something that is going to take us out of the core capability set that AWS has to offer. And they want to be able to be integrated with all of the great services that AWS provides from a data and analytics perspective. And a key note here for the whole audience to understand is that Amorphic is a cloud native, AWS native solution. And in fact, it's purpose-built for AWS and is orchestrating and integrating the data and analytics services that AWS provides, right? And Mark, maybe you can unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, no, exactly. So being an open source company, we felt the first and most important thing that we could do building this self-service analytic platform was have it be open and extensible. And so when you look at Amorphic in terms of being open, we've developed now over 200 APIs. Those 200 APIs now allow you to leverage Amorphic as your data management and governance and security platform for the storage of all data, but also the user access and permission controls for all users. In addition to that, what it does is it's not only governance on users and data, but it's also on governance of the analytics stack. So you can control now who in your organization has access not just to data, but also to the different analytics services. And all of this as an IT administrator is done with a point and click. So like for Jonathan, you could send an email request to an admin and say, hey, I have a use case in which I require SageMaker for machine learning. I need to be able to use notebooks. I can go through and get the approval from your line of business, and boom, all I do is I click on Jonathan LaCour and I add with one click the SageMaker products, which is the complete suite of machine learning services from Amazon, and boom, I'm up and running without any further integrations.
Which is such a fantastic thing. We hear a lot from customers around AWS's Control Tower product, actually, and it's a similar kind of bent, right? Is how do I make this faster and easier? I want to vend out new accounts. But I want all my guardrails in place. And to me, Amorphic is very analogous to that, but at a much greater scale. And the other thing I'll call out is Amorphic isn't something that you have to deploy outside of your environment. Amorphic runs in your AWS account. So it isn't, I'm going to go sign up for some third-party SaaS service, and I'm going to take all of my sensitive data and put it up in somebody else's environment, and that's not the case. Amorphic is deployed into your AWS account.
That's actually one of the most important points here, is that one of the changes when you look at data and analytic challenges, what we're really trying to do is break the vertical and the silo models of the past.
Absolutely.
Right, and so when you look at it and you go, hey, I'm going to do data warehousing, right? But I also want to do machine learning, and I also want to be able to do unstructured, analytics using AI services. If you look at every other vendor's product out there, they're not designed, one, for all data, so structured, unstructured, semi-structured data, but they're also, from a compute perspective, they're vertical, right? So if you're Snowflake, your vertical is data warehousing for SQL, right? It's not a great platform for doing AI on unstructured data or even machine learning. And by the way, all my data now has to go into Snowflake. The same thing for Databricks. And so with Amorphic, when we built it, it was a horizontal model, which then democratized the data across all of the analytic verticals, whether it be data warehousing, whether it be AI or ML, or even search.
Yes. Yeah, really well put. And I think that's a good summary here. So just to recap really quickly, the challenges that we're solving for: time to first insight, ease of governance and implementation, verticalizing, right? Breaking down the silos, being cloud native, AWS native, and not sending your data outside of your environment, and being use case driven, right? And all of that comes together, which I think is a really nice solution set. So I think what we should talk about now is, how do I go through this journey with Mission and Amorphic, and how does that work? So I think as we introduced kind of Mission and Amorphic at the beginning, we're partnered because we're very complementary to one another, right? Mission, what we do is we get close to our customers, we get a deep understanding of their business and what they're trying to accomplish, and then we help them leverage the technology in AWS to solve their business problems. And we're very consultative. And when we partnered up with Amorphic, Mark and team, you guys are also highly consultative, right? It's use case driven, it's customer focused. And that consultation requires that kind of attitude. And both of us coming together around your infrastructure and your data and analytics, we can really put together kind of a whole cohesive solution. And it's not something that you just shrink wrap, buy off the shelf and self-deploy, right? That expertise, that use case analysis, that implementation expertise, you can't automate that away. At the end of the day, that's why a consulting partner and a consulting kind of minded platform provider in Amorphic, they really work together well in this regard, right?
Yeah, and I think what's important to keep in mind is that, whether you're, a small startup or whether you're an established, SMB or enterprise, the biggest challenge that you have is looking for partners that can help support your business innovation. And when I was out there looking at other APN partners, one of the things that struck me as an important reason for why, we went to formalize this partnership with Mission was that we really needed to have a partner that had a strong vision and a strong execution on Amazon, which Mission certainly does. The other thing that I think is important is the simplification, right? So one of the things that Mission is really good about doing is consulting with a customer about how to achieve, their cloud data and analytic goals, and create, a digital business strategy for that organization. One customer that comes to mind is Atterbury Grain. We did on July 27th, I think it was, a webinar with that customer with Amazon. And some of the things that were really important to them about working with Amorphic was the fact that at an organization level, they were able to move from a very old data and analytic on-premises platform to a cloud platform with Amorphic. And now in terms of the things that they're able to do, document analytics, never thought that in a million years they were going to be able to do that. The other things that are really critical is being able to have a partner like Mission who can provide a full life cycle of services. So it may not just be data analytics, it may be migrating other services onto Amazon. And I think that's also a really important part and point to be made here, is one of the things that I found to be a real strength of Mission was that holistic end-to-end Amazon services and consulting and execution history and capabilities that you guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I think makes us so complementary, right? At the end of the day, we can provide that generalist overarching cloud strategy, and Amorphic has this really great focus on taking full advantage and unlocking the power of data analytics, all on AWS natively. So real quick though, let's talk about the process. So we have a kind of a proven process that we've worked through after a lot of iteration, I would say, and it really is, again, all in the spirit of that time to first insight. So it begins with a very consultative conversation, right? We have something we call essay on demand. So that's where one of Mission's solution architects will sit down with you, have about an hour-long conversation, no cost, right? No risk, just to understand what it is that you're trying to solve for. Now, data analytics will be a component of this, but we look, again, as Mark said, at the holistic kind of cloud strategy, because all of these things come together. If we're trying to break down these data silos, we need to understand your whole vision, right? And then we brief Amorphic and bring them in, and we do a kind of a use case deep dive. And that takes about a 90-minute discovery session, but we also do a demo of the Amorphic platform, so you can kind of see in practice, what does this look like, right? We start to ideate kind of what would be the things that we want to build out. What are the use cases we're going to go into? How are we going to solve these challenges together? And then we can deploy Amorphic into your environment really quickly, right? Fully automated kind of deployment. Infrastructure as code, boom, there it is in your environment. We start burning down that work together. So it's a 1, 2, 3 kind of process, starting with consultative on the overarching business goals, and then diving down a layer into a deep view of what are your use cases for the data analytics component. Then we deploy Amorphic and we get going. Notice that I didn't say we do this deep engineering thing. We build out custom notebooks and train models. And no, that's not the upfront component of it. And Mark, maybe give us, like, for those of us who are in attendance who maybe aren't familiar with going through this process, how is this uniquely different?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. One is that both of us are Amazon, part of the Amazon Partner Network, right? So it's not just Amorphic ISV and Mission APN SI. We work with the Amazon account team, so the full resource pool there. In terms of how fast right now, Mission has a really great campaign going, which is Data Lake in a Box. And I think that's something that is really powerful, because when you're looking at these types of things, companies also oftentimes look and go, oh my God, it's going to take 90, 120 days for us to do a very, very basic POC.
Right.
Nope. With the Mission Data Lake in a Box powered by Amorphic, we are deployed with a first discussion of use case in 1 week. So time to value is really key here. And again, that this is a process, a methodology that's proven, and it helps expedite, obviously, and answer lots of questions that customers have about doing the same for themselves.
That's great. And yeah, I think the Data Lake in a Box is a great example. There's no other platform you could do this with, right? There just isn't, especially not in an AWS native way. So there is a PDF in the handout section for those of you who are interested in reading up on that. Download them both, but there is one that talks about that, Data Lake in a Box offer. So we promised we would touch on some healthcare and life science, which we have. But Mark, I really want to give you an opportunity to talk to us a little bit about healthcare and life science, particularly when it comes to Amorphic and kind of data analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, extending beyond the first example that we shared here about panzer.org, this is a really exciting time, actually, to be in health and life sciences. What we're seeing right now is that there are a lot of organizations out there that can be for-profit or not-for-profit. And one of the challenges that they have is that they may have, decades of research and data, whether it is on a specific pathogen or whether it is on, a disease. And, when you start looking at the commercialization of this data, it's becoming very powerful. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars of data value that is locked up in these health and life science organizations. And again, it's really about being able to fund, the acceleration of treatments with the assets that the organization has. So the first thing I would say in terms of trends that we're seeing right now and working very closely with health and life science companies and organization is how to unlock the value of their research and their data, and make that data safely, securely, and governed for use by other third parties in the research and development of other life treatments. So that's one. A second is the emergence of the Amazon Data Exchange for health and life sciences. So, in health and life sciences, whether it's genomics, you have very large data sets. and this becomes very difficult for organizations to be able to access, share, and use. And this is a trend that we're seeing some really exciting developments with Amorphic. So we're partnered with Amazon and the data exchange, and what we're doing is we're making it much easier for data teams now to access and use and prepare that data for their analytics using, for one, we have now an Amorphic workflow for drag and drop data preparation and data wrangling, which is all built on Glue. So again, an Amazon native service made easier with Amorphic. So I think that data exchange is certainly another use case that is very exciting. Any questions on those two before I continue with some of the others?
No, I think I do want to call out. I think you're underselling how valuable that drag and drop can kind of be, right? AWS is an incredibly powerful platform. One thing that they aren't really known for is simplifying, right? That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're exposing all of the power to you and giving you all of this richness and capability. But that does open an opportunity for partners like Mission and Amorphic to, zone in and say, okay, well, we can make this bit a little bit simpler for you, right? So it makes it more accessible. And for what it's worth, I think that's absolutely the right approach for AWS. They're driving as much power and value as possible and letting folks like us attack the problem this way, but definitely don't want to undersell. Like that ETL kind of drag and drop transformation capability is very slick, and it is a great example of the type of value that Amorphic really provides. So no questions,
Jonathan,
just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, no, and one other thing, just recently we did a webinar with an Amazon health and life science startup account manager where they invited, I think, about 50 of their customers. Some of them are active and some of them aren't. And what was interesting from that joint Mission Amorphic Amazon Health and Life Science webinar on, leveraging the power of Amorphic data lakes, there were a total of 12 of the 50, and they all said, hey, you know what? This is exactly what we need. We need something that simplifies and provides our teams with a self-services analytics platform. So we are seeing it's not just talk, it's actual action in which this is one of the most pressing challenges and opportunities for health and life sciences companies. Some of the other ones, I know we were going to give more, so I want to make sure we provide other use case and examples.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so another real interesting one is in the payer. So the payers in the healthcare system. One of the challenges that they have with claims management is, obviously this tremendous amount of unstructured data, forms, documents, etc. And one of the things that we're seeing is by leveraging the AI services of Amazon with Amorphic, we can create document analytic pipelines for these payers to build better analytics on their payment claim management process. This is huge. Another one which I think is really interesting. So one of the challenges of payers is how to improve the delivery and the cost, obviously, of disease management. And this is really, I think of all the work that we're doing at Amorphic, from Panzer to other very cutting edge health and life sciences companies, this is where there's a tremendous opportunity, because whether it's diabetes as an example, which is really one of the most expensive, of the diseases, being able to proactively treat and put together a plan of action for a diabetics patient or somebody who may become a diabetic patient, the ability to streamline that process and that management care and tying together all of the different medical data sources is huge. And so we see that at least in the payer side of the business, where they're really grappling, where before they were like, oh, we're not sure if we want to go to the cloud. Now they're seeing the tremendous benefits to their customers, but also to their business, which impacts their customers with rates, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before, but I spent about 10, 12 years in the enterprise medical space doing enterprise medical records or electronic medical records. And one of the big challenges that we faced back then was this unstructured data. Documents are everything, and they're
Everything.
everywhere, and they're just, that is sort of the biggest challenge is how do I unlock the information that's in there and be able to actually do analytics on that. And the fact that this is an opportunity now, if you had told me this 10 years ago, it would have absolutely blown my mind. So I think that is a huge benefit.
Yeah, and Jonathan, what we haven't discussed is the intelligent data set that Amorphic provides. So with that unstructured data set, when it's coming into Amorphic, into the customer's S3 account for Amazon, one of the things that we're doing is we're running the AI services on that data, and we're now building a metadata table for that data where they're also able to add tags, et cetera, to it, which really in terms of usability, it changes the usability of that data for the data teams. So I think
Absolutely.
that's powerful. Now, when we look at the provider side, readmission risk is a huge issue that they're always trying to
Mm.
deal with. And what they're finding right now is by, really leveraging the power of a cloud data and analytics platform by converging now all of this information that's coming from physician records to patient records to MRIs, et cetera, and then being able to normalize that data faster using the right analytic tool, whether it is, a BI tool for historical analytics, or whether it is that AI service that is now taking, that unstructured MRI or that unstructured PDF or document, and now making it able to be seen and used, is so powerful. So the care management piece also, it's almost a renaissance as what we're seeing in the healthcare services side, where the ability to now leverage all of this data, right, securely with governance in the cloud is now possible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And thanks for diving into those use cases. I'm just wanting to be mindful of time now. We've got about 10 minutes left or so for questions, and I think we should dive into a couple of those. So all of you attendees keep providing those questions. I do have a couple that I think we should start addressing real quickly. So one of the first questions is Amorphic a multi-tenant environment, or is it a single tenant environment?
Yeah, great question. So, we are a single tenant solution in your AWS account. The data never goes to a Cloudwick or to a Mission account. It is always in your account where you have complete governance, complete control for that data.
Yeah, and I think this gets to the kind of other question about AWS being cloud native or AWS native, Amorphic being AWS native. The key thing about that to me is really the fact that your data being in your AWS environment gives not only access to Amorphic, but allows you to leverage it with other parts of your infrastructure, right? You're not locked in where you're shipping data around to 20 different places. That can be very expensive, right? And if you have it all centrally located, and then you have Amorphic providing that kind of governance and really holistic view of things, it makes life a lot easier. So, oh, this is a good nitty gritty question. Can I use Jupyter Notebooks with Amorphic?
Absolutely. And the thing that's powerful about Amorphic is we didn't even talk about this yet, data sharing. So Amorphic not only allows for data sharing, but it also allows for notebook sharing. So now data teams can build notebooks with Jupyter, with SageMaker. And the thing that's amazing here is that whereas in most cases, it takes a data team looking to build a Jupyter notebook and attach the governance and the access rights for data sets in S3, that typically takes anywhere from 2 to 5 days. With Amorphic, 2 minutes. Can you imagine the productivity that a team gets when they can build a secure Jupyter notebook with all the data privileges in 2 minutes, and then they can share that notebook with governance to a team member or to another user? I mean, that's productivity.
It's awesome, and I think one thing there's so much to talk about. So, but I'm going to piggyback on that. We talked a lot about in this conversation how if you don't have a data and analytics team, you don't have the skill sets in house. Amorphic offers you a path, and that's true, and I think that's a very good value for people. But On the flip side, if you do have an in-house data and analytics team, Amorphic can help you make better use of that team, get more out of them, help accelerate their work. And that example you provided is a great one, right? Like, you really want data scientists, believe it or not, if you ask me to describe them with a single adjective, I would use the word creative, which a lot of people would say is kind of a strange thing. You think a data scientist, creative is the word you're thinking. These people are problem solvers. They love to get creative with data. That's what they want to do. They want to dig in and create value and create insight. And, ETL and shipping data around and building governance and all this stuff is outside of that realm. It's not the creative bit. What we want is we want the creatives focused on being creative. So it's above and beyond opening this as a possibility to it all. It's also about maximizing that opportunity, right?
Well said. Exactly.
Nice. All right, am I hired, Mark?
Yeah. Spot on. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, it's about productivity. It's about innovation. Yep. And
Really
that's what, Amazon, Mission, and Amorphic do. It allows now for an organization to unlock productivity and innovation that they never thought was even possible. I mean, if you just think about not only, the top and bottom lines here, but just, the frustration that data teams have today, where, their number one problem is typically accessing data. And then the second is taking that data and applying it to a platform which will solve, the analytic problems that they're looking to discover.
Absolutely. Okay, I think the last question we have here was around, how long does it take Amorphic to get set up? And we've addressed that to a degree in our conversation. We talked about the process and kind of a 1-hour consultation followed by a 90-minute kind of deeper dive and so on. But we didn't really get into step 3 in that process was deploy Amorphic. But what does that mean? How long does that take?
Yeah, great question. So, if I look at the Mission Data Lake in a Box program, that one is set up to provide a customer with the ability to deploy Amorphic, set it up with governance and with security, as well as orchestration to, I think it's upwards of 30 Amazon analytics services today. And the deployment is all of 90 minutes. So Mission will deploy Amorphic into the customer's AWS account. There's a secure VPC connection that's created to do that. And from there, then the next steps are going to be, there would have been a workshop, right, which would have identified, what type of users, what type of roles do we want to set up for governance. There's also single sign-on integration, assuming that the company has a single sign-on, we can leverage that. We can also leverage the IAM and the Cognito settings that are part of Amazon. So I think what I was trying to get at is, data lakes typically take, to get to a production level, anywhere from, if we're looking at man years, we're looking at, 3 to 5 man years, which could be a team of 6 or 12 people working a very, very fast pace. But here, what you're looking at is a fully production ready platform, 90 minutes.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it, right? It's like
it is.
It gets you excited, right? Because even if you don't know, right, you're not sure what value you have to unlock, right? That's why we spend as much time in the consultation up front as we do in actually just getting deployed and going, is understanding, really deeply understanding. We've got this incredible set of tools at our fingertips right now. The biggest challenge is understanding, how do I put this all together? And so with that consultation, with that conversation between Mission and Amorphic, really digging in and diving in with you in your business, it accelerates that backside so drastically, along with the technology and the innovation of Amorphic, to really make it automated, right? It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. And what I love about the Mission program here is, going from 0 to hero is totally achievable. And particularly looking at, these uncertain COVID times, right? Organizations need to look to take advantage of every product, every solution. And that again is, something I really love about Mission, is the time and the care, of accelerating the ability of an organization to go, hey, Mission, I have a data and analytics need, and Mission being able to respond with a solution in a week. I mean, that's unheard of. So,
well,
good time. I think data and analytics.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good spot for us to start wrapping up, and feel the same way about working with you guys on this. It's been a really exciting time, and I think the one thing I do want to call out for our attendees is we do have sort of this kind of special offer, right? We've discussed it a lot. This 1 hour consulting session, it doesn't cost anything, right? So if you're here and you're attending and you want to start the exploration, just have a conversation, right? And we'll be very upfront with you about what's possible, what's not possible, how we can get from here to there, and walk through it together. You see here on the slide, we have a phone number that you can call, you can email us, you can visit our website. We're easy to reach, and there's also a URL there, missioncloud.com/analytics, and that will have a lot of great information, kind of summarizing what we discussed today. We have the handouts available as well attached to this webinar, and I think with that, all the questions have been answered and we can wrap up. But Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure as always talking to you, and really excited about what comes next.
Likewise. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.